Thanks, and welcome back to the Curtis Report. Another edition this week, a fantastic edition. This is really a remarkable show this week. You're going to enjoy this. We've got a couple of guests, but for most of the hour, we've got Buck Revell, and we're talking about the Kennedy assassination as we approach the 50th anniversary of that. Buck Revell, former number 2 of the FBI and formerly in charge of the FBI here in North Texas, here in Dallas. Buck Revell is going to be on the show here today, here on the Curtis Report. Again, welcome to the Curtis Report, where we talk about family, faith, and freedom. And you can check us out on the web at thecurtisinitiative.com. That's www.thecurtisinitiative.com or www.thecurtisreport.com. Take you to the same website. And in fact, if you go on that website, you'll see a photo of our guest today, Buck Revell, and a little bio about him. Remarkable individual, as well as the other guests we're having on the show here today, Adriana Boyne, and she's running for, she's a Republican, running for State House District 102. She can be with us here very shortly. Adriana Bourne will be with us. But again, the Curtis Report, you can see the bio and all that information on thecurtisreport.com or thecurtisinitiative.com. We have on the line Adriana Bourne. Adriana, welcome to the Curtis Report.
Thank you, Barry. Nice to be in your show.
Well, appreciate your being here. Thank you for taking your time out this week to talk to us about your campaign. You are running as a Republican for Texas State Representative District 102. Tell us about.
That's right, Barry.
Tell us a little bit about you and why you're running for that office.
Well, absolutely, Barry. Well, as you can tell already by my accent, I am an American by naturalization. I came here to the United States more than 30 years ago, here to Texas. I actually got married with my husband in 1987, and we lived in District 102 during 11 years before we went to the mission field. We were missionaries for 10 years, came back in 2006. We've been married 26 years and have 2 sons. I went to Bible college, but I also was interested in American history, American government, Texas history, and Texas government. Since 30 years ago, I really got involved in activism. First, on the pro-life activism, it was very important for me to let the people know about the right to life. But 8 years ago, our good friend Kelly Shackelford encouraged my husband and I to start our organization. We have a nonprofit. It's called Voices Action. Voices is the word voices for in English, but it's an acronym, and it means Voices Offering Conservative Empowering Solutions. And we educate and empower the Hispanic community with conservative fiscal and social issues and non-Hispanics and how to interact with Hispanics.
Fantastic. Now, for our listeners, we have listeners coast to coast. Tell us where 102 is and what cities and geographic area that encompasses, because we got listeners from coast to coast. Tell us.
That's right. Well, we cover most of the north part of Dallas and the south part of Richardson, most of Addison town is the town of Addison, and a little teeny bit of the north of Garland.
Okay. Tell us, the elections are next year. You've got campaigning from now until the primaries in March, correct? Tell us what are the top 1 or 2 concerns that you have in the little time we have remaining. Top 1 or 2 concerns that you have that changes you want to make or concerns about what's happening on government on the state level.
Well, it's very important to believe in a strong economy that lets small businesses work and grow without excessive government regulations. And in the constituents really want a change of what is it. We need to focus on jobs. This district is a minority district, and it's very important that we elect somebody that is consistent, but also who communicates well with the diverse district. Transportation and water are local issues that people care about. The most important thing is that they want a conservative. I am the most conservative proven person that is on the Republican primary. It's very important that we interact with the diverse population in our district. But jobs and economy, we need to make a strong economy, and also those opportunities for our citizens and their families.
Absolutely. Adriana Bourne, how can we get more information about you? What website can we communicate with you on?
They can go to Adriana Boyne, and it's AZRYANA BOYNE and certainly they just can put my name and Google search me so they can see all the things that I've been doing and certainly debating the liberals at local, statewide, and national level for several years.
Very good. Adriana Boyne, we appreciate you being on the show. The best of luck to you, and maybe we'll communicate down the road again with you. You can also see more about Adriana Boyne on our website, thecurtisinitiative.com. We appreciate that, Adriana. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you very much.
Adriana Bourne. You can see more about her on the Curtis Report website there. It is a pleasure now. Those of you who are listening on, watching the video podcast, you already know this. You can see this gentleman sitting in here. And it's a pleasure to introduce to you the former number 2 of the FBI, former director of North Texas FBI operations in the Dallas field office, Buck Revell. Buck, welcome to the Curtis Report.
Thank you, Barry. Glad to be with you.
Now you have again. Let's put you. Let's get your credentials on record. I know you, and many people here, really in North Texas and around the country, know you. But this is in syndication, and there's so many different shows. Let's get your credentials on the record. Tell us about you.
Well, I was born in Oklahoma. I'm an Okie from Muskogee. Didn't stay there long because I was born just before World War II, and my dad went to Tulsa to be Army air instructor, and then went into the Navy. And mother was Rosie the Riveter in Tulsa, working at the aircraft factory there. After the war, we moved to Tulsa and into Atlanta. I went to high school in Atlanta. I went to college at the University of Georgia and then East Tennessee State. I went in the Marine Reserves when I turned 18, was a squad leader when I was commissioned out of OCS as a second lieutenant, June of 1960. Went up to Quantico for the initial training and then to Pensacola. Became a naval aviator. Was assigned to Marine Air Group 26 at New River at Camp Lejeune. And that's what led me into the Kennedy case, because I actually became involved as a Marine officer rather than as an FBI agent. A year after the Kennedy assassination, I entered the FBI. I went to Kansas City. I went to Philadelphia, was made a supervisor in Philadelphia, transferred to headquarters, was made a supervisor in the organized crime section. Then went out again to Tampa and into Chicago, where I was the assistant agent in charge. Then back as the chief inspector in the director's office. Then to Oklahoma City, back to my home country as agent in charge. And then got yanked back to Washington again. Spent 12 years as assistant director, first 5 as assistant director in charge of criminal investigations, and then as the deputy for investigations and intelligence and international affairs, and eventually training and laboratory divisions. I had all 5 of those. When I finally said 12 years in Washington is enough,
And it is.
told the director and the attorney general that I was eligible to retire, but if they'd let me stay, I would stay at least 3 more years. Fortunately, Dallas became available. They sent me here, and I spent 3.5 years here as agent in charge for the North Texas region. And during that time, we had great success in reducing violent crime, and we also had the World Cup matches here and became very close friends with Chief Ben Click, and we worked very well together. And then I got really familiar again with the Kennedy case because of the release of a movie called JFK by Oliver Stone.
You know, and I wanted to put your credentials on the record because when we're talking about the 50th anniversary of the assassination of President Kennedy, there are a few people qualified to speak about this that have the scope of knowledge that you do. And I think it's important to put that on the record as we continue with this interview here and we talk about some of the myths and the basically misinformation associated with the death of President Kennedy. Buck Revell, did Lee Harvey Oswald on November 22nd, 1963, murder the President of the United States?
Absolutely. No question of it.
Now from there, Let's talk about this guy, Lee Harvey Oswald. I mean, at best, he was weird, strange, different, either intentionally or at least that's the picture we got of him. Tell us what we know about the history of Lee Harvey Oswald leading up to the assassination of President Kennedy.
Well, he was a product of a broken home. He didn't have a father figure in his life. He was pretty much a failure at everything he tried. He did manage, to my great chagrin, to get into the Marine Corps and was a failure at that. Ended up getting a general discharge, and it was later changed to a bad conduct discharge. After he got out of the Marine Corps at his own request, after several problems, he migrated to the Soviet Union.
And that's interesting because, and I'm going to interview because we're going to have to take a hard break here, and we're going to come right back. But I want to talk about more about that, particularly that entrance into the Soviet Union and him coming back from the Soviet Union, and more on the history of Lee Harvey Oswald, because I think Lee Harvey Oswald, the man, can tell us a whole bunch about probably why he did this. Lee Harvey Oswald, the man. We're going to take a hard break and be right back on the Curtis Report right after this message. Thanks and welcome back to the Curtis Report again, observing that 50th anniversary of the assassination of John Fitzgerald Kennedy. We're a remarkable person here in studio with us today, Buck Revell, former number 2 of the FBI, formerly in charge here in North Texas of the FBI, talking about the man that was Lee Harvey Oswald. Mr. Revell, before the break, you were telling us about Oswald's travels to the Soviet Union.
While he was in the Marine Corps, he made there was no qualms on his part about telling people that he was a Marxist. He had literature that he read all the time. He seemed to be really, it was important for him to people think that he was a person who had what we would call extreme left-wing leanings, and he supported the Marxist theory. Well, I can tell you, having been a Marine for some time, that that's the exception. But that wasn't the reason he was put out of the Marine Corps. It was because of bad behavior in many other circumstances. But then when he did get out, he essentially went to the Soviet Union.
How did he get there?
Well, he actually went in and applied and got a visa, and they let him in. And he, of course, he was interviewed extensively by the KGB. I doubt if they got a whole lot out of him, because he never had a position in the Marine Corps that really exposed him to highly classified information.
And some of the conspirators point to this part of the crux of their story. Well, and it is true. I mean, do you know of any other case in the 50s and 60s that a Marine or former Marine defected, if you will, or went to the Soviet Union and then came back?
No.
Yeah, it's a little odd in itself, but oddity doesn't convict anyone. Oddity doesn't imply a conspiracy. But his life in the Soviet Union wasn't the best either, was it?
No, and in fact, we finally got access to the files after the fall of the Soviet Union, and they didn't know what to do with him. He was a malcontent. He was they couldn't he really couldn't hold down a job. He had a Russian wife and a little baby, and they were glad to see him leave. They assisted him in going to the American embassy to get a loan so that he could get back to the United States.
So it wasn't a propaganda coup for them. It wasn't an intelligence coup. They had no use for him.
No, and in fact, I don't recall that they even made any mention of him coming back to the United States in any of their propaganda. And at that time, there was, a great deal of animosity between the Soviet Union and the United States. We were at the height of the Cold War, and very close to the Cuban Missile Crisis and so forth. So the fact that they didn't use it shows they didn't give much credibility to him.
Good point. He returns back to the United States, drifts around probably from job to job. He did eventually come to Dallas.
Right.
What was his life like in Dallas?
He was, his mother lived here.
Yeah. And his mother had a pretty significant influence over him, didn't she?
She was essentially his family. He was the only person that really would have anything to do with him. And yes, she was a powerful influence in his life.
In later years, Buck, I mean, she would always proclaim that he didn't do this, or he didn't act alone, or she would proclaim even in print with the New York Times that she thought her son was an agent for the CIA. So his mother was probably was the most stable influence on this man's life.
No, I don't want to accuse her of anything, but she did make some bizarre claims, and
Yes.
It certainly didn't indicate a stable life for him. And he wandered from job to job, and he got the job at the book depository, and seemed to be doing okay there. I mean, the people he worked with said he showed up and did his job and caused no problems. So in that particular position, he seems to have found himself. But of course, we also know that before that, he had attempted to assassinate General Walker.
Let's go to that day in General Walker, because the assassination of Mr. Kennedy happened obviously November 22nd, but the attempted assassination, I'll let you set this up and explain to us who General Walker was at the time, a very popular figure in the nation and here in Dallas at the time. But in April, Lee Harvey Oswald was found out later, after the murder of the president, that he indeed was the one that took the shot through the window at night at General Walker. Tell us about that.
Oswald had ordered a carbine rifle with a scope from a mail order house in Chicago. He had gotten it in March.
And I want to go back to that. I don't mean to interrupt you, but that seems kind of odd. But that was the norm back
Sure.
then. You could order something
Right.
through. You could order a weapon through the mail. You can't do that now. But that was the norm. I want to point that out. There wasn't something unusual or weird about that. That's how you could do that then, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
When I was in college, turned 21, I ordered a 30-30 carbine from through a mail order house because I wanted to go hunting with it, and I still have it. But no, that was available to everyone, and of course there were no. He didn't have a police record at the time, and he wasn't given a bad conduct discharge, so that wasn't on the record, and they didn't do record checks. So his getting that rifle was not a problem.
Right.
He did do it under a false identity. He used a different name. He used
Was it Lee Waddell?
yeah, and Lydell.
Lydell, yeah.
And obviously his fingerprints and handwriting were actually identified on the application and the money order that was used.
Right. So obviously he got the weapon to do ill purposes with. I mean, that's obvious, right?
Well, as you pointed out, he had been out to the